Okay, I'm going to get started by welcoming everyone. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see all of you guys here. Welcome to everyone who's joining us online as well. Today is what we call our group learning program, where I come together with students each Sunday and Wednesday to help them understand the path to enlightenment. What I do on Sundays is I start off guiding you guys in a meditation session, and then afterwards I give a talk from this book. I go chapter by chapter each Sunday. And this Sunday, we're in chapter 11, which is titled Meditation, Developing Your Practice. This is where I teach students all the ins and outs of meditation. There's 4 meditations that the Buddha taught, and these are the only 4 that you would ever need. There's more than just meditation that you would need to be able to get to enlightenment, but you also wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment without meditation either. So here at chapter 11, I help students to be able to understand the ins and outs of meditation so that you can develop a practice that's going to help you to make your way to enlightenment. What enlightenment is where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, you no longer experience any discontent feelings. You will no longer experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of this can be eliminated from the mind through training of the mind. And as I mentioned, meditation is an important part of that, but it's not the only part. By the time you get to enlightenment, you'll experience focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory, because the mind will be performing optimally. You'll notice that your personal and professional relationships are really blossoming, that they'll be at ease, where you won't be bitter and harsh and hostile any longer in your relationships. You'll get to the point where you don't even experience a bad mood anymore. It's physically impossible for you to experience a bad mood. So if you'd like to join for meditation, the way that I start this is with some chanting to ease into the meditation. You can see these chants and actually chant along if you like. There's a laminated sheet over there on the cabinet that you're welcome to help yourself to, and you can see the chants and actually chant along. For those of you guys that are online, you can go to our website, buddhadailywisdom.com, click on free books, and if you scroll down towards the middle, you'll see the chanting sheet there. These chants during the lifetime of the Buddha were used in order to help his students to commit the teachings to memory. Every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally. So he used chanting as a learning tool, as a learning device. So you can see from the origins of chanting that this isn't a rite, ritual, ceremony, worship, or prayer, or anything like that. There's none of those kinds of things in the teachings of the Buddha. If you're seeing those kinds of things associated with his teachings, those aren't his actual teachings. Those are misunderstandings. He used chanting as a way to help his students to remember his teachings, because everything he taught was oral, and they would recite his teachings orally in order to commit them to the memory. Today, as I mentioned, we use it as a way to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation. So if you chant along, you'll actually see that your mind experiences more benefit in the meditation. If you end up getting one of these sheets, not only will you see the chants, but you're going to see the English translations as well. And what you'll see is a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha. And because of that, I don't think the Buddha even created these chants by himself, because he wouldn't have gone around and said, here, chant these chants to me out of respect for me, right? This would be ego or arrogance if someone chose to do this. And by the time you get to enlightenment, you don't have that in the mind any longer. But if you learn from a teacher how to move from anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other discontent feelings to the peace and joy that is the enlightened mental state, and this teacher didn't want anything from you or expect anything from you, you might actually have a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for that person too. And that's why I think these came from his students, either during his life or after his death. After the chanting, I'm going to come in with some guidance, helping you guys to basically learn how to meditate while we're actually meditating. I'll be instructing you in the meditation. Then there'll be a period of time of quietness where we're all just meditating together. Everybody here at the temple and everybody who's joining online will actually be meditating at the same time. Now, during this period of time of quietness, I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds. You might hear a car go by, a dog barking, a bird chirping. This is all normal. Someone here might even cough or sneeze. The world around us is impermanent, but the mind in the unenlightened state craves permanence. So if you're in meditation with a craving for permanent silence, when you hear a sound, you'll cause your mind to be annoyed or frustrated. But if you're in meditation understanding that the world is impermanent, when you hear those sounds, you know that those sounds are going to arise, they're going to change, and they're going to fade away. And you can rest at ease and be peaceful in meditation, understanding that the world is working exactly like it's intended to work. After that period of time of quietness, we're going to come out of meditation with some more chanting. And that's where I'll start today's class, helping you guys to understand the ins and outs of meditation. In terms of your body position for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught. And I'm going to introduce you to all those 4 positions today as part of our class. But here at the beginning with this meditation, oftentimes people are learning in the seated position. So I'll share some details with you on the seated position just to help you get started. You could sit on the floor or in a chair. Maybe if you're at home, you're on a bench or a sofa or in a wheelchair. You can sit however you like. There isn't just one fixed way to sit. If there was only one way to sit, that would be permanence. But we live in an impermanent world, and everybody's going to find different things to be comfortable. So what I'm going to share with you are just recommendations or suggestions. You can find whatever you like. If it's something that I'm sharing with you, great. But if you find something on your own, you can use that as well. So if you're on the floor, you might sit with some cushions under your rear. This is going to help soften your seat a bit. And if you bring your legs together in the cross-leg position, you would like to just do that lightly. Whereas if they're real tight, this will impede the circulation in the lower body and cause pain in the lower body. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets your hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, allowing the circulation to flow. So you might consider doing that. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it, but it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. There's other options here as well. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. And the same thing is true for anybody who's in a chair or a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair. You can also sit however you like. Some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can see me sitting here in a chair with my legs crossed, and this can be used as well. In terms of your hands and arms, you can put those wherever you like as well if you're sitting in a chair. Your upper body should be erect with your sternum up and your shoulders back. This will help keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. What meditation is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from the mind and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. So you like the mind to be attentive and alert during the meditation. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you're real rigid with the upper body, the mind can be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be in the middle with the sternum up and shoulders back, because not only does it keep the mind attentive and alert, but it'll make it easy for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So again, I'm going to start the meditation with some chanting, which you guys are welcome to join in on. Then I'll come back in with some guidance to be able to help you. I'm wondering if someone would be willing to close the door so we don't get the pollution coming in from outside. Thank you, sir. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Wat Tung Mahakawanang Apivate Ami Sawakato Mahakawata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakava Arahang หังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตูอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตวามนุสนังโหโตภาควาติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here, you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาโพตังมหาเขวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมนามังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารนังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสรังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, good morning to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone here this morning. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. As I was sharing with you, I'm going to help you guys to understand meditation by teaching you the ins and outs of the 4 types of meditation that the Buddha taught. The Buddha taught how to train your mind to get to this enlightened mental state. As I shared at the beginning, by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll no longer experience any discontent feelings, that it's physically impossible for you to experience things like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. This is a transformation that can occur through training of the mind. There's no belief in the teachings of the Buddha. You're not believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die. You're also not following rules or commandments or doing rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer. If you've been introduced to those kinds of things as part of the teachings of the Buddha, those aren't actually his teachings. Those are gross misunderstandings of what he actually taught. He taught you to do this inner work, this inner growth, this inner development through training of the mind. He identified these 10 individual pollutions that are in the mind, and when you uproot these pollutions out of the mind, that's where the mind's starting to experience more and more of the qualities of the enlightened mental state. It's kind of like if you had the sun and there was clouds in front of the sun, it would hinder you from being able to experience the rays of the sun. But when you peel away the clouds, the rays of the sun can shine through more and more. This is what the enlightened mental state is like. While we talk about it as attaining enlightenment, one of the ways you might think about it is that the mind is already enlightened, but you just have these pollutions that are in the way that are hindering you from being able to experience it. And when you peel away these pollutions, slowly but surely, the qualities of enlightenment start shining through. The only difference in the analogy here is that with the clouds, they're going to ultimately come back and block the sun again. But by the time you get to enlightenment, having removed these pollutions out of the mind, these pollutions will never come back. As part of this training that the Buddha taught, he taught meditation. Meditation is an important part of your practice, but it's not the only part of your practice. That's why, as part of this program, each Sunday and Wednesday, I've been teaching many aspects of helping students to be able to understand how to train their mind to get to enlightenment. The core central teaching of the Buddha is called the Eightfold Path. This is a teaching that you would need to learn inside and out, backwards and forwards, up, down, left, right. You would need to know that inside and out and dial it in closer and closer into your life to be able to experience enlightenment. As part of that Eightfold Path, you learn about meditation and how meditation is an important component of your practice. So I'm going to help you guys to be able to understand these 4 types of meditation that the Buddha taught, so you can build up a practice for yourself where you're regularly and consistently meditating, practicing in the way that the Buddha taught. Because nowadays there's hundreds, if not thousands, of meditations in the world. And oftentimes these meditations are not what the Buddha actually taught, and is taking your mind in the opposite direction of enlightenment. If you were meditating in the way that the Buddha did not teach, it wouldn't actually produce enlightenment for you. You're going to need to get back to what the Buddha actually taught in terms of meditation and practice that on a consistent basis. And that, along with the other teachings of the Buddha, is what's going to produce the enlightened mental state. So as I share the teachings with you today, I'm going to be pausing a few times and opening up for questions. Whether you're here at the temple or you're online, you can ask any and all questions that you like. If you're here at the temple, there's microphones in the white bowl behind you, and there's some up here in the front as well. All you need to do is get a microphone, take it back to your seat, press the gray button. You're going to see the lights come on. You can hold this up to your chin, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. Then you can keep these microphones with you, because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can just share the microphone with them. And then if you're not using it, if you could turn it off, that'll be helpful so we don't get feedback through the speakers. And anybody who's online, if you guys would like to ask questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, and I'll be able to see that. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and ask any and all questions that you like that way. So first, in order to be able to get started on this topic of meditation, I'm going to share with you some basics to help you just kind of lay a foundation of what it is that I'm describing here when we talk about meditation. I'm going to share this definition with you about what meditation is. You may or may not agree with this definition. That's a question for you to decide, but at least when I use the word meditation, you'll know what it is that I'm actually talking about. What meditation is a technique to actively train the mind during dedicated, independent, purposeful training sessions to eliminate unwholesome qualities of the mind and cultivate certain wholesome qualities in the mind in the positions of seated, lying, standing, or walking. So it's a dedicated, independent, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities and cultivating certain wholesome qualities. It's important to understand what meditation is not also, because sometimes nowadays someone might say, oh, I'm going to go to the gym and meditate, or I'm going to go for a walk and meditate, or I'm going to go for a drive and meditate, or I'm going to go do some gardening and meditate. You actually can't do this. Your mind can only do one thing at a time. You can't actually do 2 things at a time. You're not meditating when you're gardening or you're driving or going to the gym or walking the dog or anything like this. Your mind is doing those activities. You're not doing what we're talking about in terms of meditation. Because ultimately what you're going to hear me share is a time and frequency of meditation. And you're going to hear me share that it's important to meditate 2 or 3 times a day. Well, if you just went and walked the dog 2 or 3 times a day thinking that you were meditating, you're not going to actually get to enlightenment that way. Now, you might choose to continue to do these activities. There's nothing harmful with choosing to exercise or gardening or any of these other things, but it's just not meditation. And it's important that you don't see it that way, that it's a dedicated, purposeful training session where you're in the seated, lying, standing, or walking position, and you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities and cultivating certain wholesome qualities. It's important to have a meditation teacher. Sometimes people don't understand that they need a teacher because nowadays we live in a self-service environment. If you've never baked a cake before and you're interested in learning how to bake a cake, you can go on YouTube and you can figure out how to bake a cake by yourself. You really don't need someone to teach you how to bake a cake, or you might see it as that person on the YouTube video is teaching you how to bake the cake. Well, enlightenment is not that way. You're going to need a real live teacher to be able to guide you on the path. It's you that's doing the work. You are your own independent practitioner, but you're going to need someone who understands the path and can guide you on that path. There's been people throughout the years who haven't understood this. It's only one type of individual that wouldn't be able to need teachers and guides to be able to get to enlightenment. And this type of individual is very rare in the world. That's an actual Buddha. 2,500 years ago, the individual who we refer to as the Buddha, he figured out how to get to enlightenment by himself without the help of any teachers or any guides. But you're going to need teachers and guides because you're not an actual Buddha. You can get to enlightenment, but you wouldn't be a Buddha at that point. A Buddha is very rare in the world, and the last one that the world's currently aware of existed over 2,500 years ago. So there's been people over the years that haven't understood that they needed a teacher. And I'll share a story with you about this so that you understand the importance of having a teacher. And I don't suspect any of these things are actually going to occur for you, but at least you'll understand the importance of having a teacher. There's an individual several years ago who was a practicing doctor. There's a physician in their home country, and they were trying to get to enlightenment by themselves. They were reading books, they were watching videos, they were doing all these other things, trying to train their own mind with all these different resources. After about 2 years of this, their mind worked themselves into a problem where they were sleeping 23 hours a day. They were highly depressed and sad. Their relationships were falling apart. They weren't able to go to work any longer. They were having obsessive thoughts. They were having suicidal thoughts, thinking of killing themselves. Now, this is all very detrimental to somebody's life. And this was an intelligent individual. They were a doctor. They're a practicing doctor, right? So they're somebody who understood how to study and how to learn through books and stuff like this. But they didn't understand that they needed teachers and guides to be able to help them. So after 2 years of experiencing this, for one reason or another, this person reached out and asked me for help. They found me on the internet, asked if I would help them, and I started helping them over the internet for several months. And then I realized how strong of a case that they were having, how much difficulty they were having, and I invited them to come to Thailand and let them know that I could teach them here if they would come to Thailand. So they ended up coming here, and I helped them for a period of time, and then ultimately they went back home and they continued to train their mind. And now, several years later, they're no longer experiencing any of those problems that I just mentioned. They're back to work, they're sleeping a regular schedule, they're not having suicidal thoughts anymore, they're just fine. Their relationship with their fiance did fall apart. They weren't ever able to get married to that person, but nonetheless, they're back to work and they're feeling great. And they're completely fine with the fact that their relationship didn't go forward. Now, I share this story with you to show you how important it is to have a teacher, because this isn't like baking a cake. This isn't self-service. With enlightenment, you're going to need somebody who can understand your mind and provide you the guidance that you need. Because as you're meditating and as you're training your mind, you're going to have different experiences, and you're going to need to reach out to somebody and ask them, hey, I'm experiencing this. Is this normal? And if what you get back from your teacher is, yes, that's normal, keep going, that can give you some confidence and reassurance that you're headed in the right direction. But if you don't have that ability, then you're not going to be able to gain that confidence, because you can't ask a book questions. It's not possible for you to do that. So you're going to need somebody that you can have confidence in and you can trust to be able to ask questions and get help as you need that. Whether you consider that meditation teacher to be me or somebody else, that's a choice for you to make. Just know that I don't have any expectations of you. You can learn with me now, in the future. It's really up to you. I don't need to hear from you every week, every month, every year. You could not talk to me for 5 years, 10 years, or what have you. If you reach out at any point in time during your life and you say, hey, David, I need help. Here's what I'm experiencing. I will help you. But that's a decision for you to make. Just understand that I don't have any expectations of students and I don't want anything from you. But if you would like help, I'm here to help you. But if you don't have me as your teacher, have somebody else that you can have confidence in and you can have access to, so that way you can get the help that you need. There's 4 positions to meditate in: seated, lying, standing, and walking. I'll introduce you to each of these 4 positions and how you might decide to use these, because this is like a tool belt, and assembling a tool belt and then invoking the different tools and using these different tools at different times in your journey to enlightenment. Oftentimes people are learning in the seated position. They're starting out with this. And you guys did the seated position today, and I gave you guys guidance on that, where you're sitting on the floor, you cross your legs, or you're sitting in a chair. And I explained to you all the details of that particular position. That's kind of like the primary position for most people when they're learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha and training their mind in meditation. The seated position, either on the floor, in a chair, a bench, a sofa, or a wheelchair, these are typical places where people will do the primary amount of their meditation, but not everybody. But that's oftentimes where people are starting. So the seated position is really great to get started with, but sometimes what you might notice is that you have aches and pains in your body, even sitting in a chair. You could have your hip pain or back pain or different things like this. And that's where the lying position comes in, where you lie on the floor, face up with your arms out to the side, and all the muscles in your body are completely relaxed. If you've done yoga, they call this resting pose or corpse pose, shavasana. You might hear these different terms referring to this particular position. And it's really great because all the muscles in the body are completely relaxed. But in the seated position and the lying position, the mind sometimes have a tendency to fall asleep. If you notice that you're sleepy, you could actually switch to a standing position or a walking position. There's other purposes for these as well, like the standing position. I've used this one at a bus stop before, where I was waiting for a bus and I knew the bus wasn't coming for 10 or 15 minutes, and I decided I would like to do some meditation. There was nowhere to sit down, and I just stood there with my feet at shoulder width, clasping my wrist in front of me, or having my arms to the side, or having my arms behind me. And now I can just sit there and meditate. What you're doing with the mind is exactly the same thing from position to position, but you're doing it in the standing position, which tends to invigorate the mind. So if you're falling asleep, it's helpful for that. But you could also use it at a bus stop. I might not have considered that one to be one of my main meditations throughout my day, but it was just kind of like a little touch-up meditation. I've also used it, like say I was at a government office where I was waiting in line, and this line only moves once every 5 or 10 minutes or 20 minutes because it's a process that is taking a long time and this line is not moving very frequently. I might stand there in line and do some meditation. So you could use it for that as well. The walking position is also helpful if you're noticing that you're falling asleep in the seated or the lying position. It helps to invigorate the mind a bit, but it's also helpful if you have an overactive mind, if you have a lot of energy in your mind, and the last thing you're thinking about is being still in one particular location. There's this very intentional walking. It's not like walking to the store. It's a very specific type of meditation where you're doing intentional walking. And I teach this in the various courses that I share. So next week, Monday through Friday, or I should say this week, since Sunday is the beginning of the week, starting tomorrow through Friday, I'm teaching a Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment course, where Monday through Friday from 9 to 3, I'm going to be sharing all the foundational details that you need to be able to get on the path to enlightenment. And as part of that course, on Wednesday afternoon at 2 p.m., I'm going to be teaching walking meditation. So this is really helpful for people that have overactive mind, a lot of energy in the mind. They're not interested in sitting and being still. It's also helpful if you're falling asleep in meditation as well. But it's a specific type of meditation, and it's different than the others. So these are the basics of meditation. Do you guys have any questions here to ask that you would like to ask, just to kind of understand some of the basics? No questions here? Okay, let me see if we have any questions online here. Okay, I don't see any questions online either. Okay, so now let's talk about starting and conducting a meditation session. 1 second, let me adjust this here. Okay, so it's important to understand that the mind is the boss and the body is the employee. What I mean by that is it's the body that is just following along with whatever is going on in the mind. And the mind is the boss. That's what you're training, is the boss. But in order to get to the boss, you've got to go through the employee. You can't just walk straight into the boss's office. You need to go through the employee. So if the employee is painful, they're not going to take you to go see the boss. But if the employee is luxurious, they're not going to take you to go see the boss either. You need the employees to be comfortable. It's the same thing with your body. You're not interested in the body being painful or luxurious, but instead to be in the middle where it's comfortable. And now by having the body comfortable, it'll take you to go see the boss so you can actually train the mind. So the mind is the boss, the body is the employee, but you need to go through the employee in order to get to the boss. So you'd like the body to be comfortable. When the Buddha talks about meditation, and you can see in his original words how he taught meditation, we have his words and his teachings of exactly how he taught meditation. He typically will say, prior to his teaching, he will say, set up mindfulness in front of you before you start meditating. What mindfulness is awareness of mind, where you bring some awareness to your mind. Whereas if you just plop down into meditation and try to start meditating, you're not going to get the most benefit out of that meditation session. You would actually like to bring some awareness to your mind. And that's why I do chanting, that it helps bring awareness to your mind. You're going to need a certain awareness of your mind in order to be able to chant. You can't just haphazardly chant. You're going to need to build this awareness of the mind and awareness of the breath, and it eases the mind in the meditation so you can get more benefit out of the meditation itself. Whereas if you just plop down into meditation and try to start meditating, it might be 5, 10, 15 minutes before you start reaping the benefits of that meditation. But if you kind of prepare the mind a bit by setting up mindfulness or awareness of mind prior to meditating, you'll actually get more benefit out of the meditation session. So if you use chanting, that's great. You can use that and learn how to do it, but you don't have to chant in order to get to enlightenment. During the lifetime of the Buddha, you had to chant in order to get to enlightenment because that's the way they committed the teachings to memory and they were able to remember the teachings. But nowadays, you actually don't have to chant in order to be able to get to enlightenment. That's the only one thing that I teach, that if you didn't do that, you would actually still be able to get to enlightenment. All the other things that I share with you is what you would absolutely need in order to be able to get to enlightenment. So while you don't need chanting in order to get to enlightenment, you do need to set up mindfulness in front of you before you start meditating. So if you use chanting, great, but if not, do something else. Maybe you take off your shoes, you go to the bathroom, you sit down, you kind of gather your thoughts before you actually start meditating. Bring some awareness to your mind before you meditate. In terms of the time, frequency, and schedule of meditation, it's important to understand that you're not going to be able to meditate at exactly the same time every single day. It is physically impossible for you to do that. If you set up for yourself that you're going to meditate every day at 8 a.m., I can tell you right now that it's not going to happen. For those of you guys that understand the universal truth of impermanence, you can understand through that it's not possible for you to meditate at exactly the same time every day. For example, I've been in my room before meditating, and I was maybe 3 minutes into my meditation, and my son walks in and says, "Hey, Dad, I need you to take me to school." I said, "Oh, yeah, I thought your mom was going to take you to school." He said, "Yeah, me too. She's gone. I have no idea where she's at. I need you to take me to school." I was like, "All right, well, I guess I'm going to take you to school then," right? So things are going to come up, right? So you're not going to be able to meditate at exactly the same time. The Buddha didn't meditate at exactly the same time every day. And the reason why I know that is because it says it in his original teachings. The other way that I know that is that the watch, a timepiece, didn't exist 2,500 years ago. They weren't able to keep track of exactly what time it was. They just kind of generally knew that it was morning, middle of the day, and evening based on the sun. But they didn't have the ability to take exact time. So if you ever hear somebody tell you that you need to meditate at 3:30 a.m. every day in order to get to enlightenment, right away you know that that's not true, because the Buddha didn't meditate at 3:30 a.m. every day in order to get to enlightenment. It's impossible to meditate at the same time because of impermanence, and the Buddha wasn't able to keep track of the time. And I can assure you that there's nothing special going on at 3:30 a.m. in the morning that's going to make your meditation any better or any worse. That you can meditate at any time during the day and your meditation is going to be just fine, right? So what the Buddha did is he meditated 3 times a day. Morning, midday, and evening. So what I suggest you do is you have these anchor points that somewhere in the morning you're going to meditate, and somewhere in the evening you're going to meditate. And then in the middle of the day, if you can get a meditation in, that would be wonderful. So you'd like to build up to 2 or 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes. And this can sound like a lot for some people, depending on what you've got going on in your life. But if you look at your life, there's probably some unbeneficial things that you're doing that you could kind of strip away, and you'll see that you have more time for meditation. So if you're searching social media for 3, 4, 5, 6 hours a day, you could probably scale that back some. Or if you're watching YouTube video after YouTube video after YouTube video, you could scale that back some, and you'd have a lot more time for yourself to actually meditate. It can take you 6 months, a year, even 2 years to build up to this type of practice of 2 or 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes. What you're going to notice is your frequency is more important than the amount of meditation. So if it was a matter of 1 meditation for 30 minutes or 2 for 15, you're going to find more benefit in the 2 for 15. And then gradually expand that to be longer and longer and longer. So you'd like to build up your practice in this way. And you'll see the gradual improvement to the condition of your mind in your life. You won't get to enlightenment by meditating once a day. But if you build up to twice a day and you gradually expand that to about 30 minutes, that's the real sweet spot where you're going to notice the most benefit. That's really all you need is about 2 meditations for 30 minutes a day. And if you follow this recommendation of 2 meditations for 30 minutes per day, in a month's time frame, that's about 60 meditations. Well, I can tell you that you're probably not going to get 60 meditations in a month. Even right off the bat, you're not going to be able to do that. So don't put a pressure on yourself or put an expectation on yourself that you have to be perfect with your meditation today. Because if you're getting 52, 53, 54 meditations in a month, you're making your way to enlightenment. Your enlightenment is not going to be determined based on whether you miss meditation today or not. If you miss meditation today, you can still actually get to enlightenment. The enlightenment is going to be determined if you miss meditation today, what do you do next? Do you allow that to be 1 week, 1 month, 1 year that you're not meditating? Sure, you're not going to get to enlightenment. But if you're like, I missed meditation today, let me get right back on that. And you start building up your practice, you'll be able to make your way to enlightenment. It's just going to be gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. So no need to put an expectation on yourself that you're going to be perfect with meditation when you first start, because that's not the way it's going to be. You need to gradually build this up. Then in terms of your schedule of meditation, in terms of your time, when you're keeping track of your time of meditation, it's important where possible not to use an alarm. Sometimes people will use an alarm when they're meditating. They will set an alarm for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, and then they'll set it to the side, and now they'll start meditating. I'll share with you there's one of 2 things that are going to happen if you set your alarm. You're going to either be deep in meditation, you're going to be thinking, is it time yet? Is it time yet? Is it time yet? Is it time yet? Your mind's going to be longing, yearning, right? You're trying to let that go. You're trying to get rid of that repetitive thinking in your mind. So if you set an alarm, your mind's just going to be like, is it time yet? Is it time yet? Is it time yet? So it's best to set your alarm aside. Or you're going to be deep in meditation, getting all kinds of benefit, and it's going to be like, It's like, man, if I didn't set the alarm, I could have got more benefit. So where you don't need it, maybe in the evening and on the weekends, it's best to not use an alarm. But if you need an alarm, like if you're on your way to work and you only have 20 minutes to meditate, and if you meditated longer, you'll be late and it's going to produce unwholesome results for you, then use an alarm, right? But where you don't have to, it's best to not use an alarm. The way that you measure your meditation to be able to see if you're making your way to 30 minutes of meditation per session is you look at your clock before meditation, 9 a.m., and now you meditate. And then when you're done and you feel like you're done, you look at the clock, and it's like 9:15. It's like, all right, well, I meditated for 15 minutes. Now let me just gradually expand that. So you can check in on your meditation about once a week. You would like to just kind of check in and see how long you're meditating for. I do this even today after many years of meditation, because 5 minutes of meditation can seem like an hour, and an hour of meditation can seem like 5 minutes. So you like to kind of check in about once a week to see that your meditation sessions are gradually building up to about 30 minutes. You might notice sleepiness during your meditation, where you're drowsy and falling asleep, especially in the first 3 to 6 months, because your mind is kind of like a dry sponge and you're finally giving it this training that it's needed all these years. And you might notice that it starts being sleepy either during meditation or even after meditation. You might notice more sleepiness in the mind. Like some of you guys might be sleepy right now after we just meditated, right? This is very common because the mind hasn't exercised like this. That's what meditation is you're exercising the mind. And it's just like if you went to the gym. If you haven't been to the gym for many, 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 many years, and then you go to the gym, you're going to be kind of tired, right? It's the same thing with the mind here with meditation. So you might notice some sleepiness. You kind of have like a little hump to get over. You've got a couple of options here. One is you could change your position. If you're in seated or lying position, you could change to a standing or a walking position. This will be helpful to kind of invigorate the mind. The other option, just get some sleep. There were times where I would sit down to meditate. I'd be 3 to 5 minutes into my meditation. I'd be dozing off and feeling all sleepy. And I just get some sleep. Just lay down, take a nap, right? That's what your mind needs, is some sleep. So give it some sleep. And then when you wake up, then meditate, right? So those are options for you. You might notice some physical sensations during your meditation. What I mean by this is like itching and scratching. And if you notice these kinds of things, what I suggest you do is try to ignore it and just keep focusing on the breath. And anytime the mind moves off and starts thinking about this scratch or itch, cut that off and come back to the breath. But if you're in meditation and you're just having this overwhelming urge to scratch and itch, go ahead and do that. But however long it was from the time that you noticed the itch until you actually scratched it, try to actually extend that. So if the first time it was like 5 seconds and then you had to scratch the itch, next time try to make it 8 seconds or 10 seconds. And then next time try to make it 12 or 15. And then try to get to 20 or 30. Eventually get to the point where you notice the itch, you can see that it changes, and then it fades away, because this itch is impermanent. And what you're doing is you're training your mind to be comfortable with the impermanent nature of the world and how the world around you is impermanent. So if you're in meditation with an urge to itch, try to ignore that and be unaffected, because this is your mind craving permanent comfort of the body, where in reality, your body is not going to be permanently comfortable. It's not possible in this world. Then there's visual stimulation that some people actually experience. I get emails sometimes or messages where students say, "Hey, David, I saw the color green in my meditation. Does that mean I'm going to get rich?" And they'll write me an email. They'll say, "David, I saw the color purple. Does that mean my boyfriend or girlfriend's going to come back to me? What does that mean?" Right? So I'll explain to you guys what's going on here with this visual stimulation. It doesn't mean any of those kinds of things. Sometimes people think that they're a special person just because they're experiencing these colors or images or things like this. So sight is actually occurring inside the brain. The eye itself is just bringing in light. So the sight is occurring inside the brain. That's why when your eyes are closed, you can still see things, because sight is occurring inside the brain. What we're doing as part of meditation is we're training the mind. The mind is non-physical. It's non-tangible. The brain is the physical organ. These are two separate things. And when you're training the mind, there's a connection between the mind and the brain, but they're not the same thing. And as you're training the mind and cleaning up the mind, the physical structures of the brain are actually changing. Doctors, researchers, and scientists are able to measure this these days, where during the lifetime of the Buddha, they weren't able to do that. But now doctors and researchers are measuring the brain, and they can see that the physical structures of the brain are actually changing in a beneficial way. And as these changes are occurring, you can see different colors and visual images inside as your eyes are closed. You might actually see these different colors. I actually heard this occurring many times, and I saw these things too, where I used to walk around with a lot of pressure in my skull. I used to have migraine headaches about 3 to 5 times a week. I would get significant headaches, sometimes to the point of vomiting, where I don't have any of that stuff anymore. I don't have the pressure in the skull. I don't get migraine headaches. I don't vomit and things like that because of headaches and things like that. And there were times where I was meditating and I could hear inside the skull, it was like, you could hear the brain actually physically changing. So you might notice these kinds of things. You might actually see certain colors or images while these things are occurring. So your boyfriend or girlfriend is not coming back to you based on your meditation. That's not what that is, right? If they're going to come back to you, they're going to come back to you for whatever reasons. If you're going to get rich, it's going to be your decisions that lead to that, not from your meditation. Okay. So you might observe visual stimulation. Sometimes people are taught to meditate with external stimulus. What I mean by this is like candles or music or beads or incense, phone apps and things like this. If you've been taught to meditate with those things, understand that that's what got you to where you are today. But what I'm going to teach you is it's best to leave those things behind and move on to a point where you only need 3 things to meditate. There's only 3 things that you actually need to meditate, and you'll have these 3 things with you now for the rest of your life. All you need is the body, the mind, and your breath. Those are the only 3 things that you actually need to meditate. If you can build up a practice where you're meditating with the body, the mind, and the breath, that means you can meditate anywhere, anytime. That your mind's not attached to these other things like beads and candle and incense and phone apps and things like this. Because if you're walking in a park someday and it's beautiful weather and the sun is glistening off the pond and the birds are chirping and you're like, wow, this is a really great place to meditate. I'd like to sit down and meditate. Oh, I don't have my favorite candle with me. I can't meditate. Or maybe you're like on some mountain trekking tour in the remote mountains of Chiang Mai. Maybe you're 3 days from civilization and you're like, wow, I'd like to meditate right here in the middle of the jungle. Oh man, my phone app isn't working. I can't meditate, right? So you'd like to build up a meditation practice where you can meditate anywhere, anytime. So if you're meditating with those kinds of things now, that's what got you to where you are. But now you can move beyond that. And what I suggest you do is you gradually move these things out of your life because your mind doesn't like change. It craves permanence in the unenlightened state. So when you start making changes to your meditation practice, your mind might not like this. So what I suggest you do is you do it gradually. So let's just say somebody was meditating with music right now. What I would suggest you do is you do 1 session with it and 1 session without it. 1 session with it, 1 session without it. 1 session with it, 1 session without it. Do that for like a week or so. And now when your mind gets acclimated to that, do 1 session with it, 2 or 3 without. 1 session with it, 2 or 3 without. Do that for like a week or 2. And then do 1 session with it, 3, 4, 5, 6 without it. 1 session with it, 6, 4, 6, 7, 8 without it. Gradually move away from this music. And eventually you'll get to the point where it's like, I don't need it anymore. Right? So you can do this with wholesome things and unwholesome things. If you're trying to eliminate any unwholesome thing from your life, like let's just say you smoke cigarettes now, I wouldn't suggest you go cold turkey to eliminate those from your life because your mind and your body is going to maybe have some challenges with that. And it's not necessarily a sustainable change. Instead, if you're smoking 20 cigarettes a day right now, go down to 18 for like a week or 2, and then go down to 15 for a week or 2. And then go down to 12 for a week or 2 and gradually move away from it like that. Or say you're trying to implement something wholesome in your life. Like say you would like to move to a plant-based food supply and you'd like to start eating plant-based food. Well, you can't just snap your fingers and instantly do that. You're going to need to build up your new recipes, new suppliers, new restaurants. It's going to be gradual development for you to be able to do that. So maybe you do 1 meal that's plant-based and 1 meal that's meat, 1 meal that's plant-based, 1 meal that's meat. Or maybe you do 1 day and then 1 day with meat and 1 day with plant-based, and you gradually increase it like that. That's the way that your mind will really appreciate those gradual changes. So do you guys have any questions on this, starting and conducting your meditation sessions? Yes, ma'am. If you could get a microphone, we have them around for you to be able to use. Looks like they're going to pass one up to you. Right there.
Thank you, David. I have, during the practice, I'm wondering mindfulness, how to set up mindfulness in front of me. Do you mean mindfulness is the need to be calm, the need for peace in mind, or the focus of time on the thinking mode? So how to understand the mindfulness in front of you, the teacher's images or his lecture or something like that?
Sure. So mindfulness in general is awareness of mind, where you're aware of your thoughts, your feelings, your ideas. You're aware of what's going on in there, That's what mindfulness is in general. In more detail, there's something called the 4 foundations of mindfulness, which I taught earlier in this program, and we can talk about that if you like, but that's not what the Buddha is really talking about here. He's talking about building some awareness of mind, that you're aware of your thoughts, your ideas, your feelings, that you're not just plopping down in the meditation without any awareness of what's going on in your own mind. So you'd like to bring some general awareness of what's going on in your mind as you sit down or lay down to meditate or whatever it is. That's what it means to set up mindfulness in front of you, that you're bringing awareness to your mind.
So it's the focus of time.
When I use the word focus, I think about concentration and clarity. That's what I think about with focus. But with mindfulness, we're talking about general awareness of the mind. Concentration is something separate than mindfulness. Mindfulness is just general awareness of what's going on in your mind. Concentration is to be able to focus your mind and hone your mind on a single object and practice singleness of mind.
So it's my need to practice meditation, the need.
Say again.
So is the mindfulness is is what I need to do for meditation, right?
Mindfulness is your awareness of mind, because you're going to ultimately need to practice awareness of mind at all times during your day in order to be able to get to enlightenment. Mindfulness is almost like a virus scanner. If you think about a computer, a virus scanner sits in the background looking at the hard drive, and if it sees a virus, it will quarantine it, and then it will clean it up and get it off your hard drive, right? That's what a virus scanner does. Your mindfulness is the same way. You need this awareness of mind where it's kind of like looking down at your mind and you're observing what are the thoughts, the ideas, the feelings, what's going on within your own mind. Because what you're going to be doing in your day-to-day life is whenever you see things like anger, sadness, frustration, and things like this coming into your mind, you're going to need to apply the effort to eliminate that out of the mind. Just like the virus scanner, it cleans up the hard drive. You're going to need to do the same thing with your mindfulness, looking over your mind. So that's why the Buddha teaches you that prior to meditating, you set up this mindfulness. You bring some awareness to your mind so you can start being aware of what's going on in your mind. Because you're going to hear me get into more detail here in a minute where you're focused on the breath. And anytime the mind moves off that, you cut it off and let it go. When your mind moves off the breath, that's your mindfulness. You're aware that that's occurred. And that's what you're building as part of meditation, this breathing mindfulness meditation. You're building this awareness of mind.
To see all the insight.
Yes, not to see the insight. That's not what you're doing in meditation. You're not trying to build wisdom during meditation. That's one of the big misunderstandings that people have. You're actually building wholesome qualities and eliminating unwholesome qualities. So you're developing awareness of your mind.
I see it.
Okay. All right. So I don't see any other questions here online either. So let's move into the next part. Here, this is where the Buddha is introducing his 4 meditations. And I share this with you in the original words of the Buddha, so you can see that he only ever taught 4 meditations. Because as I shared, there's hundreds, if not thousands of meditations in the world right now. And oftentimes people aren't understanding what these 4 meditations are and the purpose of them. So here the Buddha is explaining in an introductory way, what are these 4 meditations that he taught and what's the purpose of them? So here, prior to this, he was teaching his ordained practitioners something else, and then he gets to this, where he says, having based himself on these 5 things, meaning the 5 things that he taught previously, the monk should develop further another 4 things. The perception of unattractiveness of the body should be developed to abandon lust. This is a meditation to eliminate sexual cravings, because sometimes people have a high sexual craving in their mind, and this is causing agitation and frustration, because if you can get sex, you'll be happy and excited about that, but if you can't, you'll be angry and frustrated. So there's a meditation to bring down your sexual cravings, so it'll help you so your mind's not so agitated and frustrated. Loving kindness should be developed to abandon ill will. This is a meditation to eliminate anger, hatred, and ill will, and all the lesser versions like frustration, agitation, and annoyance. Oftentimes people think that that kind of stuff is coming from other people, but it's actually coming from your own mind. This is why you can transform it. There's a meditation to help you eliminate the anger and frustration, even the slightest dislike. If you have dislike towards others, it's actually coming from your own mind. Sometimes people even have negative self-talk within their own mind where you're degrading and diminishing yourself, this inner dialogue where you're degrading and diminishing yourself. If you have that, you can transform that with loving kindness meditation, where it essentially rewires your mind. Because it's not fun walking around with this degrading and negative talk inside your own mind. So this is a meditation that'll help you with that, developing loving kindness towards yourself and towards others. Then the meditation we did this morning, mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation should be developed to cut off thoughts. That's the purpose of the meditation, is you're cutting off your thoughts. You're building this internal mechanism in your mind to be able to cut off and let go. This becomes important when you understand the Eightfold Path and how meditation fits in to the overall path to enlightenment. Then here's the fourth meditation. The perception of impermanence should be developed to eradicate the conceit, I am. When one perceives impermanence, the perception of non-self is stabilized. One who perceives non-self eradicates the conceit, I am, which is nibbana, or enlightenment, in this very life. This is a meditation to eliminate what's called personal existence view and realize non-self. For some people, they've studied that with me. For other people, you haven't. And it's okay if you haven't studied this, but this is a fourth meditation. What I've done here on this next slide is I've taken each one of these meditations and I've put them in order of priority in terms of how you develop your practice. And I'm sharing with you the unwholesome qualities that you're eliminating and the wholesome qualities that you're cultivating. So what the Buddha would teach people first is breathing mindfulness meditation. You would like to spend about 4 to 6 weeks building up your breathing mindfulness meditation practice. What you're doing here is you're eliminating craving, desire, attachment, the mind longing, yearning, and chasing after the objects of its affection, because that's what's actually causing the mind to experience feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. And you're cultivating mindfulness or awareness of mind and concentration or focus and clarity, where you can practice singleness of mind. So that's when you're focused on the breath, the mind moves off the breath. Moving off the breath, that's your mindfulness that notices that. And then when you bring it back to the breath and you're focused on the breath, that's your concentration. And then when you're cutting off and cutting off and cutting off, this is training your mind to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. After you've built up your breathing mindfulness meditation for 4 to 6 weeks, you'd like to then start bringing in loving kindness meditation. This is a meditation that's essentially rewiring your mind to eliminate anger, hatred, and ill will, and all those lesser versions, even things like dislike. Right now, there's probably people in your life that you like and people that you dislike. That dislike is from your cravings, desires, attachments. You want everybody to do things this way. And when they do things this way, you like them. But when they don't do things your way, you dislike them. So you can eliminate that, understanding impermanence and that not everybody is going to do things the same way. Because there's only one person in the world that actually does things your way 100% of the time. Do you know who this person is who does things your way 100% of the time? Yourself, right? So if you can only love people who do things your way, there's only one person in the world that you can actually love. And you might actually have problems loving that person from time to time too, because you're putting expectations on yourself and you might even have dislike towards yourself. So this meditation is going to help you eliminate that and then cultivate this loving kindness, this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And then you're going to need to go out into the world and practice being loving and kind through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. It's not just the meditation that's going to produce the transformation. The meditation is like filling up your gas tank, but then you need to go out into the world and practice being loving and kind through your intentions, speech, and actions. But this meditation is an important part. Then there's this meditation to eliminate sexual cravings. As I shared with you, sometimes people can have overactive mind where they're having a lot of sexual craving and they can be agitated and frustrated when they're not having sex. So this is a meditation to help you with that, to eliminate your sexual cravings and cultivate what's called the unattractiveness of the body. Because the reason why an individual would like to have sex is you see the outer skin, the hair, the makeup, the jewelry, the clothing, the muscles, and now you're actually interested in having sex. But if this person's skin was ripped off and all you saw was the underlying pieces of the body, you probably wouldn't be interested in having sex. So I'll explain to you guys what this meditation is all about. Then there's the meditation to realize non-self, which is helping you to eliminate this personal existence view or the idea that there is a self here. And then it's helping you to cultivate impermanence, understanding that this body is not permanent, this mind is not permanent. So these are the 4 types of meditations, and what you're eliminating and what you're cultivating as wholesome qualities and unwholesome qualities. Here's some words from the Buddha on meditation. He says, a pot without a stand is easy to tip over. A pot without a stand is easy to tip over. The pot is your mind. The stand is your meditation practice. A mind without a meditation practice is easy to become discontent. It's easy for you to get angry. It's easy for you to have stress or anxiety if you don't have a meditation practice. The pot is your mind. The stand is your meditation practice. And right now, depending on if you've been meditating or not, your pot might be sitting on a little bit of a rod and your pot is teeter-tottering. Your mind is kind of teeter-tottering. But as you develop your meditation practice more and more, your stand becomes wider and wider and wider and wider. And it's harder for the pot to be tipped over, right? So eventually, by the time you get to enlightenment, it'll be physically impossible for you to experience things like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. Here's some words from the Buddha. He says, monks, there is one thing that when developed and cultivated leads exclusively to liberation, to freedom from strong feelings, to elimination, to peace, to direct knowledge, experience, to enlightenment, to nibbana. What is that one thing? Mindfulness of breathing, breathing mindfulness meditation. This is that one thing that when developed and cultivated leads exclusively to liberation, to freedom from strong feelings, to elimination, to peace, to direct knowledge or experience, to enlightenment, to nibbana. So he's saying there's one goal for this meditation of breathing mindfulness meditation. That's to get you to enlightenment. That's the only goal for this meditation. He's not saying you only need one thing to get to enlightenment, because otherwise he would have just taught meditation and that's it. But we have 45 volumes of books that are about this thick with the teachings of the Buddha. And this isn't even all of his teachings. That's just what we have left. So it's kind of like saying your car, it leads to one thing, which is transportation. But of course, you need more than just transportation in order to survive. So he's saying that this meditation has one goal in mind, which is to get you to enlightenment. And that's what this breathing mindfulness meditation is for. So the way that you do breathing mindfulness meditation, and you'd like to work with this for about 4 to 6 weeks and build this up, is you focus on the breath. And anytime the mind moves off the breath, you cut that off and let it go, and you come back to the breath. Very simple to be able to explain it, but very challenging for you to do it because your mind's not interested in doing that, right? That's what we did this morning, is focused on the breath. And anytime the mind moved off the breath, you cut that off and let it go and come back. So if your mind had to cut off and let go 10, 15, 20, 30 times, that's normal. You'll experience that in meditation. In the unenlightened state, you'll have a bombardment of thoughts. It'll be like thought. Or you'll have a thought, you'll look at it, you'll play with it, you'll indulge in it, and then you'll be 2 or 3 minutes down the road and you're like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm meditating. Let me bring my mind back to the breath. So if any of these 2 things happened, that's very normal. Even in the enlightened mental state, you will still have thoughts during meditation. The goal of this meditation isn't to eliminate your thoughts. It's to notice your thoughts sooner and sooner and cut them off and let them go easier and easier. So you're building this internal mechanism in your mind to be able to cut off and let go, cut off and let go, cut off and let go. Because that's what your mind doesn't know how to do. That's why when you broke up with your boyfriend or girlfriend, you were angry and frustrated for several weeks or months or maybe even years. Maybe you were lonely or bored or missing this person because your mind couldn't let go, right? But if you learn how to let go and you train your mind to let go by exercising the mind, when that anger is coming up, you can cut it off and let it go. If you're at work and you hear your boss or your coworker say something, and now you feel this anger starting to arise, and you notice that with your mindfulness, your awareness of mind, you can cut it off and let it go. You can protect your mind and preserve your mind, right? So that's what you're doing with this meditation, is you're building this internal mechanism to cut off and let go. So in meditation, you're cutting off anything and everything that's coming up, whether it's wholesome or it's unwholesome. But in your day-to-day life, you're only cutting off the unwholesome thoughts. So if in your day-to-day life, you're thinking, I'd like to call my mom and maybe invite her to lunch. No need to cut that off. Call up your mom, check in on her, see how she's doing, invite her out to lunch, see if she'd like to go have some food. You don't need to cut that off. But if you're thinking about punching your boss in the face, cut that off, right? Because that's going to produce unwholesome results if you act upon that, right? So you'd like to cut off the unwholesome thoughts in your day-to-day life. It's kind of like a professional athlete. If I was a pole vaulter, my workout in the gym is going to look very different than my sport. I'm going to be doing weight training, cardiovascular training, agility training. But when I go do my sport, it looks completely different. I'm doing pole vaulting, right? So these two things are going to look different. Your meditation is training. You're cutting off everything and anything that's coming up, realizing that you will have thoughts during meditation. Even an enlightened being has thoughts, but they have quietness and stillness between their thoughts. Then in your day-to-day life, just cut off the unwholesome thoughts. Then there's loving kindness meditation. Loving kindness meditation is where you're doing affirmations within your own mind. You're doing these phrases, things like, may I be peaceful. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be free of all discontentedness and the suffering it causes. You repeat each one of these on the out breath. And I guide students in this from time to time. And I teach this from time to time. Here I'm just introducing it to you, but you can actually learn this and you can actually understand how to actually practice this as part of your practice. I'm going to be doing this at different times throughout the month and throughout the weeks. You'll see that I actually teach this, and I've taught this many times. It's on our YouTube channel, on our podcast, and other places. So this is a unique type of meditation. You're not actually trying to invoke some kind of special power to change yourself or to change other people. You're actually rewiring your mind. So what you hear me say during this meditation is you hear me say things like, may mom and dad be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be free of discontentedness. You're not trying to change mom and dad here, or your brothers and sisters, or people like that. You're changing your own mind. You're rewiring your own mind to be more loving and kind, so that now when you're around mom and dad, you can be more loving and kind. Oftentimes when you're having difficulties and struggles in a relationship, people think the way to solve this is to change the other person. You might be actually doing this where you're trying to change other people. You will never solve your relationship issues by changing other people. You can't change other people, but you can change your own mind. And by changing your own mind with this meditation, now when you're spending time around those people, you'll function differently. And that's what will actually transform your relationships. So this is a meditation that's going to help you to do that. And you can learn this after you've built up your loving kindness meditation. I'm about to change the slide to the next meditation, which is a meditation to eliminate sexual cravings. And in this next slide, I have a picture of a dead body, and it's dissected. So I just give you guys a heads up, because if you'd like to look at this, you'll see it. But if you're not interested in looking at it, you might decide that you're not interested and you'd like to close your eyes. But this is actually how you eliminate your craving for sex. So I'm going to flip this here. Okay. So this is a dead body. And during the lifetime of the Buddha, they would actually look at real live dead bodies because they had access to those. People would bring these dead bodies into the temple and they would have access to them. And they could meditate around the dead body. And they would see like maggots and different bugs and different things. They would see the body decomposing and they would smell it too. So this is one of the ways that they would actually meditate in order to develop the unattractiveness of the body. Where today we don't do that with bodies because there's disease and illness that can come about from that. So what we do instead is we look at pictures like this, where you just sit here with your eyes open, looking at this picture, and you develop the unattractiveness of the body within your own mind. You look over this type of picture, and there's plenty of different pictures like this that you can get from the internet, and you can actually see the body in this undesirable form. And then slowly but surely, you can cultivate the unattractiveness of the body where the mind gradually diminishes its sexual craving. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not like you do this one time and then instantly you're not interested in sex anymore. That's not the way that it actually works. But gradually over time, it'll gradually diminish. Because like I mentioned, if you have a really strong sex drive, you might be out there having sex with lots of different people. And now you can experience sexually transmitted diseases. You can experience fights and arguments. Some people can actually get murdered. You can have your material possessions destroyed. This is the result of making decisions to have sex with lots of different people instead of just one loyal partner. So you would like to bring your sexual life down to just one loyal partner. And over time, you might decide to completely eliminate your sexual craving 100%. So this meditation can help you to either decrease your sexual craving or completely eliminate it 100%. Oftentimes students come to me and they'd like guidance on this privately. I do teach this at different times during the year, but more frequently students come to me and ask about it privately. Maybe they have a addiction to pornography or sex or something like this and they need this. So if you ever would like to talk about this, I will help you to be able to understand how to do this more thoroughly. Today I'm just kind of introducing it to you. Then there's a meditation to help you realize non-self, where you can eliminate the mind clinging and holding on, thinking that this body or this mind is who you are as a person. It's similar to loving kindness meditation that you're doing these affirmations. And as you're doing each one of these affirmations, it's helping the mind to strip away this idea of a self or this concept of a self, this personal existence view that exists in the mind. And I teach this at different times as well. This isn't something that you normally start with. You're going to probably take a year or two to build up to the point where you're ultimately maybe doing this type of meditation. So do you guys have any questions on the 4 types of meditations or how they're done? Yes, ma'am.
Do I need to practice step by step this procedure?
Yes. So these first 2, the breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation, those everybody is going to need those. And you're going to need to start with breathing mindfulness for 4 to 6 weeks, build that up. Then you bring in your loving kindness meditation. And that'll take you up to at least a 3 to 6 month period when you're first building up your practice. Then as you're noticing, if you have challenges with sexual cravings, that's a specialized meditation that not everyone's going to need, but it's available for people who need it. And then the meditation to realize non-self, that's about a year or 2 down the road. And everyone's going to need to realize non-self in order to be able to get to enlightenment, but not everybody needs this meditation to be able to do it because there's other options that you can employ besides this meditation, but this will help you. So this is the kind of strategy of how to approach this and build up your practice. Yep, you're welcome. Okay. So as I shared, these are the 4 types of meditations. What you're eliminating is unwholesome qualities and what you're cultivating is wholesome qualities. We walked through those already. So what I'll do to just end off our talk today is share these last words from the Buddha where he says, meditate, monks, do not be complacent, lest you will regret it later. This is my instruction to you. You won't find anywhere in the teachings of the Buddha where he's pushing you or he's trying to convince you or he's trying to force you to do anything whatsoever because he already got to peace. He already got to joy. And then he spent the rest of his life sharing with others how to experience that same mental state. He's not trying to pressure you or control you to do any particular thing. Instead, if you're interested in understanding this better way of life and how to get to this peace and joy, he would share it with you. But this is one place where you'll see him kind of motivating his students a little bit, saying, hey, meditate, because if you don't meditate, you're going to regret it later. Don't allow the mind to be complacent, because what your mind's going to do when it's time to meditate is it's like, oh, I want to see a little bit more social media, or I want to watch a little bit more videos, or I want to go do this, or I want to go do that. The mind's complacency will tend to put meditation on the back burner, but you're going to need to prioritize your meditation and make it a real priority. What I would say here is don't ever give up. Don't give up on your meditation practice, because you're going to see that over the course of your life, your meditation practice is impermanent. It's going to be going up and down. But if you can consistently meditate for multiple years at a time, you'll be able to gradually make your way to enlightenment. If you're meditating, like I mentioned, once a day or once a week or once a month, you're not going to get to enlightenment that way. But if you can gradually build up your practice to 2 or 3 times a day for 30 minutes, understanding it take you 6 months to maybe even 2 years to build up to this, you'll gradually make your way to enlightenment. But you're going to need more than just meditation. Oftentimes people think the Buddha sat under a tree, he meditated, and then instantly got to enlightenment. This isn't actually true. There was many more things that he needed besides meditation. It took him 6 years to get to enlightenment. It was gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that led to his enlightenment. And meditation is an important component of that. And you wouldn't be able to meditate your way to enlightenment, but you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment without meditation either. So you're going to need to prioritize this and build up your practice. Okay, so I'll just end class by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for your interest to learn and understand the teachings of the Buddha. If you guys would like to learn more, there's plenty of opportunities for you guys to do that. You'll see these on our bulletin board over there. You'll also find them on our website as well. Like, for example, this evening at 6:30, I'm going to be guiding students in a meditation here and then just sharing a little bit of the Buddha's teachings, but really mainly opening up to questions. It syncs up to the Sunday night walking market. If you're coming to the walking market, you can come here at 6:30 if you like and do some meditation. And then tonight at 9 o'clock, I'm going to do the same class that I just did. I'm going to do it at 9 p.m. as well. Because, for example, the people in Europe right now are sleeping, and I live stream my classes. So I make the classes available for everybody in the world so that they can either attend at 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. And this way I can help the entire world to be able to learn the teachings of the Buddha. So you could come to any of these. Next week, from Monday through Friday, from 9 to 3, I'm going to be teaching a Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment course. And all of these courses, they're live here in Chiang Mai, of course, but I'm also live streaming them through Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, and they're also recorded. So even if you can't attend live, you can watch the recordings. So if you're interested in understanding the path to enlightenment, to be able to have this transformation in your life where your mind's experiencing complete peace and joy, I recommend that you start with this first book. You can actually download it from our website for free. You can take it and go print it. You can get printed versions here by just reimbursing us for our printing cost, or you can get it on Amazon. This would be the best place to get started. And what I just taught you is chapter 11 out of this book, but there's a lot more detail in the actual book. So again, whatever you choose to do today, have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Take care. Sawadee-kap. Sawadee-kap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.